Good morning. It is Thursday, July the 11th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that knows that being a true conservative is about common sense. And my podcast is called The Drill, of course, and it is about true conservatism versus issues-based conservatism, and what the difference is and why it matters. My podcast is made possible by Spreaker.com. It can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and YouTube, and my email address is storytimes@hotmail.com. I'm on Twitter at Ronald Hartgrove and on Facebook at The Drill. I started my socio-political odyssey as a conservative Republican, and I was taught by the left that I was a conservative because of where I stood on the issues, which sounded reasonable. But whenever I engaged a liberal in a debate, I couldn't win. And I soon figured out that the issues were a fallacy that only appeared reasonable, but were, in reality, a trap. The issues were created by the left for the left. The issues are an attempt to subordinate reality to politics. So, is there any way for a conservative to win? Yes, by redefining what it means to be a conservative. Instead of defining conservative by the issues, I now define the word conservative by reality. And the reality is that the presumption is always made for the status quo. I change only when there's an obvious case for change. The left has the burden of proof always. By redefining the word conservative, I will not only win, I will never lose. The purpose of my podcast is to convince issues conservatives to become real conservatives and thereby learn to defeat the left each and every day. And when I come back, I'm going to be reading a transcript from the Rush Limbaugh show. Actually, I'm going to finish reading the transcript from the Rush Limbaugh show. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back. And let's see where we're at here. With the yesterday, it was on transcript I was reading from called "Has the World Gone Crazy, Senator Rubio?" Yes. And I was making some observations and critiques about that. And as I was reading it after I was done with my podcast, I realized that there's a lot more that needs to be said about this particular transcript and his analysis. And so I want to go ahead and spend the entire time of this podcast analyzing this in more detail. So we'll start at the top. Rush. Now, I don't want anybody to misinterpret this as a criticism of Marco Rubio, okay? So right away, what he's doing is, this isn't a good lead-in, because he's being mealy-mouthed, okay? Remember last week I cited a piece from you, I think it was The Federalist, and it was a piece by David Harsanyi. He's a great, great writer. Asked everybody, please do not get it wrong what I'm going to say. I'm not criticizing Harsanyi. I don't want anybody sending him notes saying I was ripping into him today, because I wasn't. If Mr. Limbaugh speaks clearly, if he communicates properly and effectively, he won't have to worry about people misinterpreting what he's going to say. Okay? If somebody does misinterpret, he can set them straight. Okay. If Mr. Harsanyi comes back and says, gee, I heard a rumor, again, he can set Mr. Harsanyi straight. So, don't be mealy-mouthed. That's one of the things that being a true conservative means being definitive, knowing what you're talking about, knowing what you're saying, and say what you know. Instead of all of this, well, don't get me wrong, qualifiers. You miscommunicate by doing that. Second paragraph, he just wrote something that really struck me. Okay, struck you how? Here's an opportunity for him to make a value statement, to act like a conservative. Because that's what conservatives do. We make judgments. We judge. And we judge because it's realistic to judge. So struck you how? Struck you as right? Struck you as wrong? Struck you as good? Struck you as bad? No answer. No response. Again, here, this is where Rush has been influenced by the left through the news media. And it's the news media that says, we'll give you the facts, we'll let you decide. So the news media is going to pretend to be neutral. And now Rush Limbaugh is pretending to be neutral. But wait a minute, Rush Limbaugh is a conservative. He's not neutral. And it's beyond being a pet peeve. It's a genuine concern. Again, why? Concern because it's wrong, because it's right, because it's good, because it's bad? No answer. And I'm amazed at how few people in politics and on our side realize how dire the consequences we face are. Well, what are those consequences and why are they dire? No answer. And so we start to slip into a malevolent universe premise here, that the world and the universe is a very dark and dangerous place, when as a matter of fact, it isn't. Like Mona Sharon and the Never Trumpers, they don't think there's any crisis in the country except for Trump. Oh, so there is? They don't think there's any danger that the American way of life is founded is in peril. It is? How so? And when is in immediate peril, immediate jeopardy? Or is this something that this peril or this jeopardy is going to happen in a few years? No answer. That's poppycock talk. There's nothing to be afraid of. There aren't any crises forces out there trying to turn our culture upside down. That's paranoia, unquote. They don't see it at all. To them, Trump is the big problem. The big problem for what? They say they don't see it at all. See what? The Hassani piece chronicled all of the perversion, all of the absolute filth that has become of left-wing daily life and politics. Now, here he gets to a little bit of making value statements with perversion and absolute filth. Some details here would be better. Not only the details, but now that once you've made the value statement, it is imperative on a conservative to make a further value statement. There's two parts to a value statement. Number one, identifying what's right and wrong. Number two is telling people what they should do to correct the mistake, right? When you go to, if you're a teacher and you're teaching your child or a child how to do English, you point out, okay, this is wrong. What you should have done is this. Or mathematics. You added this incorrectly. This is where you went wrong. This is what you should have done. So the same thing here is that if there's perversion and filth, then what is it that conservatives, at least, should do about it? What should we do? Because that's the question every person in America, no matter what your political affiliation, asks over and over and over every day. What should I do? The alarm goes off. What should I do? You're up and what should I do? Should I have coffee first? Should I eat breakfast first? Should I shave first? Should I take a shower first? What should I do? And it's that way all day throughout the day. What should I do? So the same thing applies here. There's perversion and filth that are subverting this country. What should I do? Unfortunately, this is a place where Rush can be of maximum influence. And he lets it slide. He lets it get away. And then, next paragraph, and then he included a line. He said, quote, if any of this stuff ever becomes mainstream, we're going to be in trouble, unquote. The stuff, what stuff? And we're going to be in trouble. What kind of trouble? Economic trouble, financial trouble, and how soon is it going to happen? And more importantly, what should we do about it? No answer. And that's the line that got me. Got you how? What is it? Is it right? Is it wrong? Good, bad? What do you mean if it ever becomes mainstream? It is. Okay, what is it? What is mainstream? Is mainstream for what percentage of the country? 30, 40%? Is the 30 or 40% mainstream? I always thought mainstream was at least 50% or more. I don't know. It depends on how you define mainstream. Well, then why don't you go ahead and define it instead of equivocating? But this stuff already dominates entertainment. It dominates pop culture. It dominates education. It dominates mainstream media. Is that right or wrong, good or bad? And what should I do about it? Again, he has the opportunity to be influential here, to come out and not spread Rushisms or Limbaugh'ism, but to talk the truth. And in a manner of speaking, talk the truth to power. Okay? And then tell us what we should do. He could have all kinds of influence. And again, he lets it get away. He lets the opportunity slide. Wrong. Bad idea. And that's the thing, that true conservatives, you need to come out and say, this is what's right, this is what's wrong, this is what you should or shouldn't do as a result. Next paragraph. If it becomes mainstream, that's the problem. It isn't fringe anymore. It happened right now. I remember warning about it 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15, 10 years ago. Now here we are. Now here's, in effect, a confession. He's also bragging. What he's saying is, I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. Some cases, perhaps bragging about it is a good idea. In this particular case, it isn't. Because he's bragging about that he warned 25 years ago, and yet it happened anyhow. What does that say about his influence? His cultural, socio-political influence. A lot of things, none of it good. That he has no cultural influence. And the reason he has no cultural influence is that he's afraid, scared to death to make value statements. He's scared to death to judge. Of all people, ironic, isn't it? Everybody thinks of Rush Limbaugh as being very judgmental. But when you read his stuff, if you really listen to his radio broadcasts, you realize that whatever judgmentalness he may have had at one point is gone. It's been laundered out of him. Too bad. Too bad for him. Too bad for his listeners. Too bad for the country. Let's see, I remember trying to talk to people about abortion, just to give you an example of this. 25 years ago, I said, if we don't put a stop to this, all life is going to be worth nothing. If we could let it get established that life could be snuffed out for the reasons of the convenience of the living, then none of us are safe. And they thought that was extreme paranoia kind of talk. And that's one of the things that you're going to get from the left. This illustrates also an interesting point beyond the fact that, again, he has the opportunity to make a value statement, and he fails to take it. But that the left will encourage you not to make value statements and also encourage you to overreact. He talks about extreme and paranoia. And that's what the left will do. They won't come out and tell you you're wrong about something. If you really want to trip up a lefty, when they come out and say, well, that's extreme, ask them this, but am I wrong? And you know what they're going to do? They're going to say, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. As a matter of fact, most everybody's going to do it. Well, anybody that does this, anybody that acts like a lefty is a lefty. I don't care how they vote. I don't care what they claim to be. You can claim to be as conservative as George Washington. But if you act like you're on the left, you're a lefty, period. End of it. Comrade. Okay? And but they'll call you extreme or paranoid or something of that nature, and you can shut them down with one simple question. But am I wrong? They're loath to make value judgments. They don't want to do that. It screws up the game plan. Because once you start getting into making value judgments, we're going to get around to the point of judging socialism. And socialism can't stand the scrutiny. So it has to have a value-free environment in order for it to flourish. Okay, going on, next paragraph. I said, well, you just watch. Again, he's making predictions instead of making value statements. They've already got you and everybody else think he's perfectly free to kill, fine to kill as many babies a year in the womb as you want. Nothing results from it. No harm done. It's fine. The next thing they're going to go after are your great-grandparents and your parents. They're an inconvenience. Who would want to live this way? Take them off the life support. Do whatever, just give them a drug. Obama even said it. Quote, to hell with their will to live. Give them a pill, make them comfortable. Unquote. And again, no value statements. Is this right? Is this wrong? Is this good? Is this bad? And why? And what should we do about it? All he's doing is bragging. I told you about it. I told you so. I told you so. So much of this transcript and so much of what he was talking about when he was broadcasting this is just simple braggadocio. I told you so. I told you so. Who cares? Who cares that you told me so? You make a prediction, so what? I don't care. What I want to know is, what should I do? So, to that end, is it right or is it wrong? Should I go this way or should I go that way? What's to say the next person that becomes undesirable isn't treated this way? You say, Rush, that's paranoid. Now look where we are. Now the Democrats are giving a standing ovation to the idea of aborting a baby up to the time of birth, and in some states after the baby is born. We're long past the point where it's stuff heading our way. We're going to head it off. It's here. It's arrived. And again, he's rather vague about this, what it is. And then what he's talking about is the idea of aborting a baby up to the time of birth. And he fails to make the value statement. No conservative should be using the word abortion when it comes in terms of a pregnancy. You want to say that a plan was aborted, fine. But no conservative should be using the word abortion because abortion is value neutral. You've got to make the value statement. You are killing your child. That's what he should have said. Standing ovation to the idea of killing a baby up to the time of birth, and in some states after it is born, in other words, committing infanticide. Legalizing infanticide. That's not only wrong, it's grotesque and it's evil. And what should be done is, number one thing to do is sue them under Roe v. Wade. Okay, because Roe v. Wade, the law Roe v. Wade prohibits this. Roe v. Wade says that up to 20 weeks gestation, the decision to terminate the pregnancy, i.e. kill the baby, is a decision between the mother and her doctor, and a matter of, and that there's an expectation of privacy. After 20 weeks, the state may have a compelling interest in preventing the mother from killing her baby. And so here's New York passing a law that thumbs its nose at Roe v. Wade. And that's the first thing that should be done, is that the state, New York, should be sued under Roe v. Wade. Even though conservatives hate Roe v. Wade, as long as it's the law of the land, we got to go by it. If we say, as conservatives, that the law is that everybody's subordinate to the law. As long as Roe v. Wade is the law of the land, it's there, and we have to obey it. And so does the state of New York. If the conservatives have to obey Roe v. Wade, the liberals have to obey it too. So that's what should be done there. Well, next paragraph. Well, I have a version of this in a tweet by Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio was blown away the other day when he read that there were people licking ice cream at grocery stores and then putting it back in the freezer. Have we gone crazy? What's going on? He added to the tweet, he said, quote, in just the last 7 days we've decided that the Betsy Ross flag is offensive, to kick police officers out of Starbucks, boycott Nike again, Starbucks again, and now Home Depot. And to lick ice cream at grocery stores and put back in the freezer. Has everyone gone crazy? I give Marco Rubio the credit of calling it crazy. So there he is making a value statement of sorts. But again, he would do better to come out and say all of this is wrong. He would also do better to make it, not try to make it sound as though the whole world is falling apart, that every other person is going into the grocery store to get a lick of ice cream. He would also do better to realize that Nike's decision is a property rights issue. It's their company, their sneakers, and they have the right to decide what to put on them or what to leave off of them. They have the right to decide that they're going to produce a shoe with a Betsy Ross flag, and they have the right then to change their mind for whatever reason, if it's because they're pressured or not pressured or whatever. Now, the rest of us have the right to decide we're going to buy or not buy Nike sneakers, or buy or not buy Nike stock. Okay? But it is Nike's property. It is their decision to make, so who cares? Let them do it. It's not a political issue is the point. I don't have to go again to the government and or go to Rush Limbaugh and get his approval for the way I've decorated my apartment, because it's my property. So, and then kicking police officers out of Starbucks, that happened at one Starbucks. It would have been helpful if Mr. Rubio had pointed out that this is not a Starbucks official company policy. Okay? If Starbucks makes it an official company policy that police officers are not welcome in Starbucks, in any Starbucks in the country, then, or maybe even the world, then the senator has reason to be worried or concerned. But it happens as a one-off. One barista goes and asks a couple of police officers to hit the bricks. Come on, find something else to do. Then the boycotting of Nike and Starbucks and Home Depot. And who cares? How often does that really do anything? Is the left able to boycott somebody and actually, when was the last time they were able to bring a company, drop the company's revenue to the point where it was almost bankrupt? I don't think it's ever happened. So, and then have people gone crazy. But again, right and wrong. This is wrong, it's no good, and what should I do about it? Got to finish and make the value statement and be influential. If you fail to make value statements, if you try to be neutral on everything and then hope that everybody gets your point, gets the drift, gets where you're going with this, you're wasting your time. You don't come back to me later and say, I don't get it. How come nobody's upset about this? Why aren't more people jumping up and down and screaming and yelling? It's because you haven't made a value statement, you moron. Make the value statement. Judge. Let's see. Next paragraph. It hasn't peaked yet, meaning this perversion, wackiness, lunacy on the left. They're going to nominate somebody who is. He's making a prediction. Question is, should they? Whatever the left is going to do, should they do that? Should they nominate somebody that's wacky and loony? From a strictly partisan political standpoint, I say yes, because then they're less likely to get that person elected, and perhaps we can all get on with our lives. But for the good of the country, no. It's not good for political discourse, and it just pollutes the political atmosphere, and they shouldn't do it. And every Democrat right-thinking Democrat should abandon the party if they do. Let's see. They're going to nominate somebody who believes all this stuff, the odds are. And if they end up nominating Bite Me, and this is one of the things of Rush Limbaugh that I like the least, is his tendency to use his own jargon. He has these own little esoteric little words and phrases that only he understands, but everybody else is supposed to pick up on, and understand, like Bite Me. Now, I happen to know that that's his nickname for Joe Biden. And what was the F.U. Schumer? Instead of calling him Chuck Schumer, he calls him F.U. Schumer. And that kind of thing. So he shouldn't, if he wants to be taken seriously. If you don't care, you're just being a comedian or a clown, then go ahead and use all the nicknames that you want. This party's going to fall apart. It may be in the process of falling apart anyway, but the left isn't going to fall apart, making another prediction instead of a value statement, such as if the Democrat Party continues going in the direction that it goes, it deserves and should fall apart, disintegrate, turn to dust, cease to exist. And that's the truth. The left is totally crazy. They've been totally crazy for a long time. And too many people have looked at it as just a fringe minority, but that doesn't pose any kind of new existential threat. And that's just not accurate. They've been threatening and posing a threat for years, and there hasn't been any pushback until Trump came along. Well, again, this is an indictment of Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh is indicting himself. There hasn't been any pushback. There hasn't been anybody to sound the alarm, and that's true. For 30 years, Rush Limbaugh has been doing this show. And for 30 years, he's been absolutely ineffective. The only way we can get any efficacy, according to Rush Limbaugh himself, was to elect Donald Trump. That Rush Limbaugh has wasted his time and wasted the time of all of the people that listen to him. Next paragraph. So now there's some official pushback, and look what happened. Donald Trump wins the presidency on the basis that finally somebody sees it and wants to do something about it. And even with all this, we still have people who don't see it yet or who don't want to see it. Okay, so first of all, what is it? Second thing is, again. Are they right to not want to see it? Are they wrong? Is it good or is it bad to want to see it, to be blind yourself to this? Is it the truth? And if it's right or wrong, what should they do? How should they correct their mistakes? How should we avoid making the same mistake that they make, whoever they happen to be? The other thing is, this is why I consider Donald Trump to be a true conservative. Is he a perfect true conservative? No. But he is a true conservative because, as Mr. Limbaugh correctly points out, he's the only one that comes in and starts to make a difference. Why? Why is he making a difference when Rush Limbaugh, who's been behind the mic for over 30 years, fails to? Why? While Sean Hannity, who's been behind the mic for 20 years, fails to. Who was it? I think it was Hugh Hewitt that's celebrating his 19 years behind the microphone. He fails to make the difference. Not one pundit, right-wing pundit in this country, makes any type of a difference the way Trump does. Now, some might argue, well, he's president of the United States. He has power. But he's only in office for 8 years, maximum. While these people have been behind the mic for decades. And the fact of the matter is that it goes deeper than that, than just politics and being in power and being in office. The reason that Trump is able to be effective is because he judges. And he does so in public. He came out during his campaign and said, the Iran deal is wrong. It's bad for America. I'm going to make it right. I'm going to tear it up and we're going to renegotiate. He goes to NAFTA. NAFTA is wrong. It's bad for us. I will renegotiate. I will tear it up and renegotiate. On and on and on. That's just two examples. You can think for yourself the other examples where he comes out and boldly judges. And this is what I'm telling conservatives. You must judge. And you must be unafraid to do so in public. Now, be prepared to admit that you're wrong. Okay, if you get the facts wrong, then you say, you know what, you're right. I messed up on that fact. And correct your mistake. But judge. Because you know what? At the end of the day, there's no way to avoid making judgments. One of the best ways to stop a lefty that tells you, and I've had one at work that yelled at me, don't judge. And I said, why not? You are. Because when they're demanding that I stop judging, they are judging me. They're trying to use ethics to deny ethics. Judging in order to rid us of judgment. Doesn't work. So, anyways, that's the end of the transcript. And so, like I said, Rush Limbaugh should have more influence, much more influence than what he does. And I also want to make sure that I remind people that what my purpose here in criticizing Rush Limbaugh or Hugh Hewitt or whoever is not to, I don't want to supplant them. I don't want to get rid of them. I don't want to see them out from behind the microphone and, that they're destroyed or something of that nature. What I want to see them do is get their minds right. Quit being a fool. Quit letting the left call the shots. Quit being an issues-based conservative. Be a true conservative. Learn how to do things right. Learn how to do things better. Acknowledge your mistakes and correct your mistakes. Be better. Be influential. Aim to be influential. Because if you're not going to do that, then you're wasting your time. And you may as well just stay on the golf course. So, who are the true conservatives? They are the people that understand that conservatism is not just a political, but cultural as well, or political lifestyle, but a cultural lifestyle as well. They are patriotic people who use common sense. They make judgments instead of predictions, speak clearly and definitively, and are not afraid to say no. They are open-minded and ask why, rather than why not. They are consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of their existence, unafraid to learn or correct their mistakes. They are normal Americans. And that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thanks for listening and have a great day.